"Ma'am, I'm going to need you to move." Now, the words sliced through the first-class cabin like a blade through silk. 16-year-old Maya Richardson looked up from her chemistry textbook, her boarding pass clutched between manicured fingers. The flight attendant, Sharon Whitfield, stood in the aisle with her arms crossed, her perfectly painted lips twisted into something that wasn't quite a smile. "There must be some mistake with your ticket." Sharon's voice dripped with false sweetness. "This is first class." Maya's fingers tightened on the armrest. She'd heard that tone before, in boutiques where salespeople followed her around, in restaurants where she was seated by the kitchen despite empty tables by the window, but never at 30,000 feet, never on her father's airline. The morning had started differently. Maya had arrived at JFK Airport 3 hours early, not because she needed to, but because she loved watching the planes. Her father had taught her to identify each model by its silhouette against the dawn sky. The Boeing 777 that would carry her to Los Angeles stood gleaming at Gate 42, its tail bearing the distinctive blue and gold logo of Apex Airlines. Maya had helped design that logo when she was 12, sketching it on a napkin during a boardroom meeting where her father had snuck her in. Nobody knew that story. Nobody knew a lot of stories about Marcus Richardson and his daughter. That was by design. Maya had checked in at the economy counter, same as always. Her father insisted on it. "Never forget where you came from," he'd tell her. "Never let privilege make you soft." The agent had upgraded her quietly, as instructed. No fanfare, no special treatment visible to other passengers. Just a girl in jeans and a Howard University sweatshirt, heading to visit colleges on the West Coast. But Sharon Whitfield saw something else when Maya boarded. She saw worn Converse sneakers that didn't belong in first class. She saw braided hair with colorful beads that clicked when Maya moved. She saw skin that didn't match the usual first-class demographic on the Tuesday morning JFK to LAX route. Sharon had been flying for 15 years. She knew who belonged and who didn't. "Sweetie," Sharon said loud enough for other passengers to hear, "I'm sure you're confused. Economy is through that curtain. Let me help you find your actual seat." Maya's voice stayed steady. "This is my seat. 2A. She held up her boarding pass. Sharon didn't even glance at it. "That's impossible. There must be a printing error. These seats are for our premium passengers." The businessman in 2B shifted uncomfortably, pretending to read his Wall Street Journal. The woman across the aisle suddenly found her phone fascinating. Maya recognized the dance. Everyone saw what was happening. Nobody would say anything. "I need you to gather your things," Sharon continued, her voice hardening. "You're holding up other passengers." Maya didn't move. "I'd like to speak to the lead flight attendant, please." Sharon's laugh was sharp. "Honey, I am the lead flight attendant on this flight. And I'm telling you to move. Now." The cabin fell silent. Even the usual pre-flight rustling stopped. Maya pulled out her phone. Sharon's hand shot out. "No phones during boarding." That's a federal regulation. It wasn't. Maya knew every regulation by heart. Her father had quizzed her on them since she was 8. "I'm calling customer service," Maya said calmly. "That's my right as a passenger." Sharon's face flushed red. "Listen, I don't know how you got that ticket, if someone gave it to you or if you found it, but you cannot sit here. These seats cost thousands of dollars." The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Maya's thumb hovered over her father's contact. He was probably in a meeting. The quarterly board review was today. She knew because she'd helped him prepare his presentation last night, checking his numbers while they shared Chinese takeout in his home office. But she didn't call him. Instead, she dialed the customer service line, the number every passenger could call. The recording started, asking her to press 1 for English. Sharon grabbed for the phone. I said no phones. The movement was quick, aggressive. Sharon's fingernails scraped Maya's hand as she yanked the phone away. A thin line of red appeared on Maya's skin. The businessman in 2B finally looked up. Hey, that's assault. I saw that. She scratched her. Sharon spun on him. Sir, please don't interfere. This is a security issue. Security, the magic word that made everything acceptable. Maya stood slowly, her chemistry textbook tucked under her arm. I'll move, she said quietly, but I want your name and employee number. Sharon smiled triumphantly. It's on my name tag, sweetie. Sharon Whitfield, 20-year veteran. Now, move along. Maya walked through the first-class cabin, past the passengers who wouldn't meet her eyes. She found an empty row in economy and sat down. Her hand was still bleeding slightly. She took a picture of it. Then she opened her laptop and began typing. Not to her father, to the anonymous employee complaint system her father had implemented 2 years ago, the one he reviewed personally every Monday morning. She described everything, the words, the tone, the assumption that she'd stolen or found the ticket, the physical contact, the scratch, the other passengers who witnessed it. She hit submit as the plane pushed back from the gate. The response was immediate. This complaint has been flagged for executive review. Maya smiled and opened her chemistry textbook. She had an AP exam next week. Organic chemistry waited for no one, not even Sharon Whitfield. 3 hours into the flight, Sharon was making her rounds in first class, basking in the compliments of passengers she deemed worthy. The businessman in 2B had asked for a third vodka tonic. The woman in 3A wanted another blanket. Sharon served them with practiced grace, the earlier incident already forgotten in her mind. Just another day keeping the premium cabin premium. That's when the cockpit door opened. Captain Reynolds stepped out, which was unusual. He almost never left the cockpit during flight. His face was grave. Sharon, I need to speak with you, now. She followed him to the galley, confused. We've had an executive complaint filed against you, he said quietly. During this flight, Sharon laughed. That girl? Please, she was clearly in the wrong seat. I've been doing this for 20 years. Captain Reynolds pulled out his tablet. The girl you removed from 2A? You accused her of stealing or finding a first-class ticket? Sharon nodded confidently. She didn't belong there. You could tell just by looking at her. Reynolds turned the tablet toward her. On the screen was a corporate communication marked URGENT. That girl is Maya Richardson. Her father is Marcus Richardson. The name meant nothing to Sharon. Reynolds saw her confusion. Marcus Richardson, as in Richardson Holdings, as in the company that bought Apex Airlines 18 months ago. That girl you scratched, who you accused of theft, who you humiliated in front of a cabin full of passengers. Her father owns this airline. Sharon's legs went weak. She grabbed the galley counter for support. How was I supposed to? Reynolds continued reading from his tablet. Mr. Richardson has reviewed the complaint personally. There were 17 witnesses in first class. The gentleman in 2B has already provided a written statement. 3 other passengers recorded portions of the incident on their phones. Sharon's mind raced. But she didn't look like... she was wearing sneakers. She's 16, Reynolds said flatly. She was flying to visit UCLA and USC. It's in her passenger notes, which you didn't check. You didn't even look at her boarding pass. The cabin suddenly felt very small. Sharon could see her 20-year career dissolving like sugar in hot coffee. Furthermore, Reynolds continued, Mr. Richardson will be meeting our flight personally when we land, along with the head of HR and legal counsel. The remaining 2 hours of the flight passed in slow motion for Sharon. She stayed in the galley, hands shaking as she prepared service items. she couldn't bring herself to deliver. The other flight attendants whispered among themselves, the story spreading like wildfire through the crew. Maya Richardson, the owner's daughter, scratched and humiliated, accused of theft. When the plane began its descent into LAX, Sharon looked through the curtain into economy. Maya was still reading her chemistry textbook, occasionally making notes in the margins. She looked so young, so focused, so unbothered. The landing was smooth. As the plane taxied to the gate, Sharon saw the crowd through the cockpit windows. 3 black SUVs parked on the tarmac, men and women in suits waiting by the jet bridge. And standing in front of them all, Marcus Richardson, 6'3", custom-tailored suit, arms crossed. Sharon had seen his picture in the corporate newsletters she never read. The door opened. Marcus Richardson was the first to board. He walked past Sharon without acknowledging her existence, heading straight to economy. Every passenger watched as he knelt beside his daughter's seat. "Hey, baby girl, how was the flight?" Maya smiled. "Educational." Marcus helped her gather her things. As they walked toward the exit, Maya stopped in front of Sharon. She didn't say anything. She just looked at her, then at her father. Marcus Richardson finally acknowledged Sharon. "Miss Whitfield, we'll be conducting a full investigation. You're suspended immediately pending review. Please surrender your wings and employee credentials to HR." Sharon's hands trembled as she unpinned the wings she'd worn for 2 decades, the ones she'd polished that very morning. "Mr. Richardson, I didn't know." "That's exactly the problem," he said quietly. "You didn't know. You assumed. You assumed my daughter didn't belong because of how she looked. You assumed she was a thief or a fraud. You put your hands on her." His voice never rose, but each word landed like a hammer. "Every passenger deserves respect. Every single one." The first-class cabin was silent. The businessman in 2B was recording everything. The woman in 3A had tears in her eyes. As Maya and her father exited the plane, Sharon heard Marcus Richardson say something that would haunt her forever. "You know what the worst part is, Maya? This happens to people every day who don't have a father who owns the airline. Every single day." Maya's response was clear and calm. "That's why we're going to change it, Dad. Starting today." The next morning, every employee of Apex Airlines received a mandatory training notification. The subject line read, "Respect, Dignity, and the Maya Richardson Protocol." The email detailed new policies. Any employee accused of discrimination would face immediate investigation. Body cameras would be worn by all lead flight attendants. Customer complaints would be reviewed within hours, not weeks. And at the bottom of the email, a single line that would become legendary within the company. Every passenger should be treated as if their father owns the airline, because respect shouldn't depend on who you know. Sharon Whitfield's termination was finalized within 72 hours. The investigation revealed 14 previous complaints of similar behavior, all buried in bureaucracy, all involving passengers of color. She tried to sue for wrongful termination. The case was dismissed. 17 witness statements and 3 videos made it very clear what had happened on Flight 447. Maya Richardson finished her college tours. She got into every school she applied to, Harvard, Yale, MIT, but she chose Howard University, her mother's alma mater, the same one whose sweatshirt she'd been wearing on the flight. She's studying chemistry and business. She interns at Apex Airlines every summer, working in different departments: customer service, baggage handling, gate operations. Her father insists she learn every job from the ground up. Employees know who she is now, but she still flies economy when she travels alone. She still wears her Converse sneakers. She still carries her chemistry textbook. And she still watches every interaction between flight attendants and passengers, taking notes in the margins. The businessman from 2B, Thomas Chen, became an unexpected ally. His video of the incident went viral, sparking conversations about discrimination in premium spaces. He now serves on Apex Airline's Diversity Advisory Board. He sends Maya a message every time he flies. "Your seat's empty in 2A, he always writes, keeping an eye on things for you. The Maya Richardson Protocol has prevented over 300 documented incidents of discrimination in its first year. Flight attendants now undergo 16 hours of bias training. Customer service reviews every upgrade personally. And Sharon Whitfield? She works at a car rental desk in Newark. Every time she sees an Apex Airlines plane fly overhead, she remembers the beads that clicked, the scratched hand, the chemistry textbook, the girl she assumed didn't belong. Sometimes the most expensive lessons are the ones that cost you everything. Sometimes power comes in Converse sneakers. Sometimes judgment comes from the very people you judge. And sometimes, just sometimes, the universe delivers justice at 30,000 feet. What would you have done if you were in that first-class cabin? Would you have spoken up when Sharon grabbed Maya's phone? Would you have been the businessman who finally said something, or would you have been the others who looked away? The truth is, we all like to think we'd be heroes. We'd stand up, we'd speak out, we'd do the right thing, but silence is comfortable. Looking away is easy. Minding your own business feels safe. Maya Richardson knew she could have ended it with one phone call to her father, one text, one name drop, but she didn't. She let Sharon Whitfield show everyone exactly who she was. She let the other passengers show who they were too. Only Thomas Chen passed the test. That's why Marcus Richardson didn't just fire Sharon. He changed the entire system. Because the problem wasn't just one flight attendant with 20 years of unchecked bias. It was a culture that allowed her to flourish, a system that buried complaints, passengers who witnessed injustice and stayed silent. The Maya Richardson Protocol isn't just about training flight attendants. It's about empowering passengers to speak up. It's about creating consequences that matter. It's about ensuring that no 16-year-old girl, regardless of who her father is, ever has to prove she belongs in a seat she paid for. Every month, Maya receives letters from passengers, young professionals who were questioned in business class, families who were treated differently at check-in, elderly passengers who were dismissed and disrespected. They all say the same thing. The Maya Richardson Protocol made them feel seen, made them feel protected, made them feel like they belonged. There's one letter Maya keeps framed in her dorm room. It's from a 12-year-old girl named Aliyah who was flying alone to see her grandmother. A different flight attendant had tried to move her from an exit row her mother had specifically booked, claiming she looked too young even though she met the age requirement. Aliyah had remembered the Maya Richardson Protocol from the safety card. She'd asked for a supervisor. She'd stated her rights calmly. She'd been treated with respect. "Dear Maya," the letter read, "I didn't have to prove I belonged. I just had to know that I did. Thank you for making sure someone like me matters." Sharon Whitfield has never apologized. In interviews, she maintains she was just doing her job, protecting the premium cabin experience, maintaining standards. She says she couldn't have known. She's written a book about her experience, calling it Turbulence When Good Intentions Go Wrong. It sold fewer than 500 copies. The reviews were brutal. One former colleague wrote, "Sharon still doesn't get it. She thinks this is about one bad day, not 20 years of bad behavior finally catching up." But that's exactly the point. She shouldn't have needed to know. Respect shouldn't require a revelation. Dignity shouldn't depend on daddy's net worth, and belonging shouldn't be determined by someone who confuses prejudice with policy. Maya Richardson graduated summa cum laude. She's now working on her master's degree while serving as the youngest board member in Apex Airlines history. Her first proposal was unanimously approved. Random testing of the passenger experience. Mystery shoppers of all backgrounds, flying in all classes, reporting on their treatment. The program has already identified 43 employees who needed additional training and 3 who were terminated for violations similar to Sharon's. The flight attendant union initially protested the Maya Richardson protocol, calling it excessive and punitive. That changed when Marcus Richardson released the full investigation file. 23 complaints against Sharon Whitfield over 2 decades. Each one dismissed. Each one featuring a passenger who didn't look like they belonged. The union president issued a statement the next day. We support measures that ensure every passenger is treated with dignity. The protocol stays. Sharon Whitfield may have lost her wings, but her legacy lives on in an unexpected way. She became the cautionary tale that transformed an airline, the name every trainer mentions, the mistake no one wants to repeat. New flight attendants study her case in detail. They watch the videos. They read the witness statements. They learn exactly how bias can destroy a career in 3 hours and cost hundreds of thousands in legal settlements. Comment below if you think Sharon got what she deserved, or if you think the punishment was too harsh. Share your own stories of discrimination you've witnessed or experienced while flying. Tell us about the times you spoke up and the times you stayed silent. Subscribe for more stories of justice served at altitude. And remember, these aren't just stories. They're reminders that discrimination can happen anywhere, even in the clouds. But so can justice. So can change. And sometimes all it takes is one brave 16-year-old with a chemistry textbook and the courage to stand her ground, even when forced to give up her seat. The real question isn't what Sharon Whitfield learned from this experience. It's what we learn. Every time we board a plane, every time we witness injustice, every time we have the choice to speak up or stay silent. Maya Richardson could have destroyed Sharon Whitfield with one phone call. Instead, she destroyed the system that created her. That's the difference between revenge and revolution. That's why her story matters. That's why Sharon's fall was necessary. Not because one flight attendant needed to be punished, but because an entire industry needed to be awakened. What happened on Flight 447 wasn't unique. It was just the first time it happened to someone with the power to ensure it would be the last.